I got married at 23 to my ex-husband, who was 28. Our marriage lasted a year and 5 months before we decided to go our separate ways. It was a mutual decision because we couldn't imagine spending the rest of our lives together. We were constantly fighting and couldn't even be in the same room without arguing. So getting a divorce was the best option. My parents were supportive because they knew not to meddle in my life. However, my mother-in-law wasn't as understanding. She believed that divorce meant giving up on the marriage and thought we should always keep trying to make it work. She never left my father-in-law despite his multiple affairs. I didn't share her views and tried to explain this to her as gently as possible since she had always been kind to me during my marriage. I felt worse about breaking her heart than about the divorce itself. The divorce was finalized about 2 years ago, and that was the last time I heard from or spoke to my ex-husband. I moved to a different part of the city for work, and we didn't stay in touch. We didn't have many mutual friends, just a couple we were close to from our first internship. I haven't kept up with him, and assumed he hasn't kept up with me either. We didn't even follow each other on social media. We didn't hate each other. We were civil but had enough of each other by the end. After my divorce, I thought I'd stay single for a while, but then I met my current partner, my fiancé. We've been together for about a year, and he didn't mind that I started dating him just 7 months after my divorce. My ex and I had been mentally separated for a long time. The legal process just made it seem longer. My fiancé knew about my past and didn't care that I'd been married before, but his mother was a bit more uptight about it when I first met her 6 months into our relationship. She was poly, but closed off and didn't warm up to me despite meeting me a few more times. So I decided to just go with the flow. If she eventually liked me, great. If not, at least I tried. Then came the pregnancy. My fiancé and I found out I was pregnant 4 weeks in, and I decided to keep the baby. He was thrilled, even though we'd only been together for a short while and weren't married. None of that mattered to him. He knew deep down that I was the one for him, and I felt the same way. We didn't rush into marriage because I didn't want another wedding so soon. My fiancé respected my feelings, especially since my emotions and hormones were all over the place during the pregnancy. I didn't want to agree to something and then regret it later. I might feel differently about marriage once the baby is born. I didn't think it was a good idea to jump from one marriage to another. I wanted to make things work with my fiancé during and after the pregnancy, to see how we'd handle situations. Only then would I be ready for a second marriage. I felt I was being rational and reasonable, and my fiancé agreed with me. However, his mother thought I was being too dramatic and insisted we get married before the baby arrived. She believed that babies born outside of marriage are illegitimate and called them a certain word I won't repeat because I dislike it. I didn't agree with her at all, but chose not to argue because it didn't seem worth it. Neither my fiancé nor I cared about her opinion as long as we were okay with our plans. During the 7th month of my pregnancy, my fiancé proposed, and I said yes immediately. I knew he was the right man for me. I had never felt that way with my ex, so I knew this was real. Marriage could wait, but we were at least engaged. His mother wasn't happy, but there was nothing we could do about that, and we didn't want to fix it. She had been sour throughout the pregnancy and ruined my vibe every time she visited us to see the baby. Every time she'd visit, she'd wait for my fiancé to leave the room before lecturing me on the importance of marriage before having a child. She even read articles to support her point. I just had to nod along and pretend to care. Then, almost a week ago, I went into labor and was rushed to the hospital by my parents because my fiancé was at work. My parents had been coming over to look after me as I was close to my due date. My mother-in-law had volunteered to be with me, but I'd rather be alone than with her. My fiancé came to the hospital as soon as he could, and so did his parents. Everyone I expected was there within an hour, but then my ex-mother-in-law suddenly barged into the room. We had a private birthing suite, and only 2 people were allowed in the room at once, and just one during delivery. I chose my fiancé and my mom to stay with me. My ex-mother-in-law, however, forced her way past the hospital staff and my family, declaring that the baby I was giving birth to was her son's. I hadn't seen her son, my ex, in 2 years since our divorce. She had to be dragged out by 2 male nurses while she screamed at me to admit I'd been cheating on my fiancé. Her outburst was loud enough for the entire hospital to hear. My fiancé was shocked but tried not to let it affect him. His mother, however, became outraged and stormed into the room, demanding my mother leave so she could talk to me. When my mother refused, she started arguing with her right there. During labor, I was in so much pain that I didn't care about anyone else's feelings. When my boyfriend's mom started causing a scene, I yelled at her to get out, or I have security remove her. I had been trying to stay calm throughout my pregnancy, but the labor pain was too much, and I finally lost my cool. Even the nurse was surprised by my outburst, as she had been trying to get my boyfriend's mom out of the room for 3 minutes while she argued with my mom. After my outburst, she finally left, and I focused on delivering my baby. A couple of hours later, I gave birth to my son. I didn't want to think about my ex-mother-in-law, so I told everyone but my fiancé to go home and that I'd meet them later. It was past midnight by then, and my fiancé was incredibly supportive, staying with me and taking care of me throughout the night. The next day, when we got home, I told my fiancé I didn't want to see his mother for a few days. He seemed surprised, thinking she liked me, but he assured me he'd keep her away until I was ready. After being discharged, it was time to talk to my ex and understand what his mother had been up to. With my fiancé by my side, I called my ex. He answered, likely expecting my call. He explained that he had been seeing someone with a similar name to mine and had been keeping it a secret from his mother. My ex had been avoiding introducing his new girlfriend to his mom because she kept pestering him about getting married and having kids. His mom mistakenly assumed that he and I had gotten back together after she overheard him talking to his girlfriend on the phone. Our names sound similar, so she thought he was talking to me. Since then, she had been asking about me, and my ex let her believe we were together to stop her constant nagging about marriage and kids. He even told her I needed time to adjust and that it would be best if she stayed away from me for a while, which is why she hadn't contacted me. Unfortunately, that day at the hospital, my ex's aunt was also there for a checkup. I've only seen her a few times, but since she and my ex's mom are close, she also believed I was back with my ex. When she saw me, heavily pregnant, being rushed to the birthing suites with another man and 2 families, she immediately informed my ex's mom. That's how she ended up barging into my room. I couldn't press charges because I was busy delivering a baby, but thankfully, she was thrown out of the hospital. She went home, confronted my ex about what she saw, and finally learned the truth. However, neither of them had the courage to call and tell me any of this, waiting for me to contact them first. So I could ask, and they'd finally tell me what had happened. It was ridiculous and very irresponsible of my ex and his mother. I had half a mind to file a restraining order against both of them because it was crazy and could have gone south very easily. He apologized and told me they were moving out of the state so he could live with his new girlfriend. Anyway, I have nothing to worry about now. My fiancé was also really annoyed by all of this. After the phone call, he told me he'd been really concerned and confused when my ex-mother-in-law had barged in like that, but he trusted his gut because he knew I'd never do that to him. So he kept quiet throughout and held it together for my sake because I was giving birth to his baby then, and that's all that mattered. It was really sweet of him, and I'm grateful that I have such a trusting and kind man as my fiancé. Once we knew the truth, we told our families about it as well. Of course, we expected them to be okay with all of it, but my fiancé's mother was far from okay. She wanted her son to get a paternity test done at the earliest and refused to change her mind, even after she learned the truth. I was okay with the idea and didn't care because it would just show her what an idiot she was being. But my fiancé put his foot down and told her he was going to do no such thing because he trusted me completely. His mother had been trying to get him to get a paternity test right from the time the whole fiasco with my ex-mother-in-law took place. But my fiancé wasn't on board with that. I found it a little strange that he was refusing to get that test done, because if I was in his place, I might have thought the same. So I asked him why he wasn't okay with the idea. He told me that his entire life he'd always done exactly what his mother had asked him to, but now he was tired of being her puppet all the time. He didn't want to constantly dance to her tunes and do what she wanted him to do. Now that he had more people to worry about, it wasn't as much about the test as it was about his own self and his relationship with his mother. So essentially, the real reason he refused to get the test done was that he didn't want to give his mother the satisfaction of knowing she'd pushed him into doubting me somehow. I respected that it was pointless anyway because I hadn't been with anyone else after my fiancé, and it literally couldn't have been anyone else's baby but his. For a week, my fiancé has been fighting with his mother over this, and both of them are as stubborn as the other. I want to suggest they go no contact, but my fiancé told me he doesn't want to lose his dad as well, since the poor old man has always counted on him to visit and keep in touch. His mother isn't the easiest person to live with. His dad, older than his mom, finds it difficult to stand up for himself the way he used to. It takes a toll on him mentally, so he mostly relies on my fiancé now. His dad always stood up for him when he was younger and made sure he didn't have to follow all this mother's ridiculous rules, giving him some freedom at least. My fiancé visits his parents almost every other weekend, and I really like that about him because I get along with his dad. I can see where he's coming from. His dad also cannot leave his mother because they've been together for over 3 decades, and he loves her too much to actually leave. Going no contact isn't a viable option for us right now, but at the rate things are going, there might not be any other way out for him. His mom hadn't spoken to me directly so far, but yesterday she called me and told me I needed to get that paternity test done ASAP, or else she'd go no contact with us instead. She threatened that she'd never let my fiancé set foot in her house again if I didn't get the test done. In the heat of the moment, I told her I'd wish she'd cut us both off as soon as she can because I'm sick of her nagging. I was really tired because having a baby isn't easy, and despite all the help from my fiancé and parents, I was still emotionally and physically exhausted. She wasn't helping the situation by acting this way, so I went ahead and said whatever came to me first. She hasn't contacted me since. She hasn't spoken to my fiancé either, and I'm afraid I might have messed up by reacting the way I did. If she does cut us off, I don't think my fiancé will be very happy about it because of his relationship with his dad. It's not my place to interfere there, but to be fair, she's the one who involved me by calling me up in the first place, so it's not my fault. I'm just confused about what to do with this. So to be very honest, am I the a-hole for telling my future mother-in-law that she can cut me and my fiancé off if she wants to because she kept pushing us to get a paternity test over a misunderstanding? Update 1. I read through the comments on the post and immediately told my fiancé about what happened. You guys were right. I should have told him about the call as soon as it happened, but I was too tired for an emotional confrontation at the time. Of course, I couldn't keep this a secret, and it wasn't worth it either, so I told him everything. He was furious, not at me, but at his mother for dragging me into this. It's pretty messed up because I had a baby just over a week ago, and despite that, she didn't see anything wrong with calling me and threatening to cut us off just to stress me out. My fiancé trusts me, and that should be enough for her. I don't even know why she's so worked up about this whole thing, but there's usually no explanation for her actions. She's just a crazy control freak who wants everything to go her way without any concern for others' feelings or thoughts. Instead of wasting time arguing with his mother, my fiancé decided to talk to his dad instead. The only reason his dad hasn't left yet is because of his age and because he thinks he loves her. In my opinion, he's just used to her presence and mistakes that for love. Even if he does love her, she most definitely doesn't. Her idea of love is bossing people around and having 100% control over their lives. That's not love, and I don't think she understands that. I'm glad someone like that won't be a part of my life anymore. More importantly, she won't be part of my baby's life. My fiancé is currently at his parents' house, trying to convince his dad to leave his mother so he can finally say goodbye to her before we get married. The last thing we need is her trying to micromanage our wedding and then our married life. I'll keep you guys in the loop about whatever happens. Update 2. Hey, so yesterday my fiancé went over to his parents' place to talk some sense into his dad and get him to finally leave his mother. He was there for about 5 hours, and when he finally came back home, his dad was with him with his bags. It was really late, so I didn't post an update. Today I have some time because my mom is taking care of the baby. My fiancé was able to talk to his father yesterday only because his mother mistakenly let him in. She thought he was there to apologize and say he had dumped me. Instead, he stood his ground and spoke to his dad, urging him to leave. She didn't call the cops because she was too worried about her image and reputation among her friends. The most she could do was scream to drown out his voice. His father was conflicted and unsure of what to do, but gradually my fiancé got through to him. He realized he couldn't stay with his wife anymore. Their marriage had been over for a long time, but he hadn't seen it because he was so in love with her. Sadly, those feelings weren't mutual. She just wanted to control them, mistaking it for love. My future father-in-law finally decided to leave, leading to a huge fight with his wife. After a long verbal argument, he gave up and started packing his bags while she continued to shout and threaten that she'd never take him back. It didn't matter, though. He had made up his mind. Once his bags were packed, she let them leave, slamming the door hard after they were gone. Now his father is living with us, along with my parents. It's a bit crowded, but I love it because I've always wanted a big family. They all help with the baby and chores, so I have no complaints. I'm being treated like a princess now. Unfortunately, my mother-in-law won't see or be a part of this due to her stubbornness. It sucks to be her, but she can't help it. Here's a short update. It's been almost a month since my fiancé and I got married. We had an intimate and beautiful ceremony 2 weeks ago with close family and friends. My father-in-law is in the middle of a divorce, and my mother-in-law still isn't talking to us. However, everyone, including me, is happier without her. She thinks she's punishing us by cutting us off, but we don't care. It's just sad for her. At least my family is happy, and that's what matters. Stay tuned for more stories from Revenge Remini. I'm a 34-year-old widowed woman. During the last year of the pandemic, my husband died of COVID-19. We had 3 children together. Financially, I can manage the household on my own. The small amount of monetary help we receive from my husband's workplace goes into our savings account for any unexpected expenses. It's been almost a year since his passing, and things have become really hard for me, both emotionally and because of my children's closeness to their grandparents. I need to maintain a relationship with them, even though they have always been passive-aggressive toward me after my husband's death. They believe they have a claim over everything that belonged to my husband, which is legally incorrect. Everything that belonged to him now belongs to me and our children. My mother-in-law, 59, is more aggressive than my father-in-law. After his son's death, he changed somewhat and got really close to our 3 children. He knows that if I leave, I'll be taking the kids with me, so he doesn't cause trouble and is quite chill about it. According to my husband's will, the land and assets he inherited from his grandfather, along with other assets and cash, are to go to me after his death. We don't have a lot, but it's enough. Raising 3 kids and myself isn't easy, and half the money will go to college tuition. So, in the long term, the money and assets aren't really that much for us. Things between my mother-in-law and father-in-law were never good. I don't know how she won over his heart, but from what I understand, they got married because she was pregnant with their first child. They had a total of 4 children. Because of their strained relationship, my husband's grandpa gave his assets to his grandchildren instead. My father-in-law was unreliable, with no good paying or stable job, and he wasn't a good father or person. My mother-in-law always expected to gain a fortune through my husband. She constantly eyed the assets he inherited and those he created himself. If she had been a nicer and kinder person, I might have considered her wishes, but she was neither of those things. In fact, she never liked me or wanted me around, so I decided to keep my distance. The only reason she is kind to my children is because of her own selfish desires. The other day, when I went to pick up my kids from her home, my mother-in-law stopped me on my way back to the car. Standing on her porch, she said she needed to talk to me about something related to my husband. She kept her words straightforward, saying that because she spent money raising her son, she deserves half of the inheritance he left. She made it very clear. When I refused to discuss her claims further, she accused me of being selfish for taking everything. She then threatened me, reminding me how she helped me get a job when I was on the brink of homelessness with my kids. She said she would tell my boss to fire me and take me to court to ruin my life. She emphasized her closeness with my boss, boasting about their friendship and how easily she could get me fired. I met my boss for the first time at my husband's funeral, as she is a close family friend. Knowing I had no job and that my in-laws wouldn't support me, she hired me as her secretary. I love my job and work hard to ensure I never give them a reason to fire me. Her threat to get me fired scared me because finding a job isn't easy. If I lose this one, it will hit me pretty hard. Everything just makes me stressed out. After hearing this, it really hurt me. I excused myself and asked her to talk to me through my lawyer. I don't know what will happen, but all I can do is pray and hope for the best. Hey everyone, I read all the comments and didn't expect this to blow up like it did. Thanks for all the upvotes. After everything happened, I contacted my lawyer and asked him what to do. He told me not to worry because I have a job contract that states I can't be fired before 2 years unless I break the rules of the firm. He suggested I explain the whole situation to my boss and bring her to our side. If my mother-in-law starts any trouble, we can charge her with verbal harassment and threatening, which is considered domestic violence. This means we can get a restraining order and sue her in court. But honestly, I don't want to go that way. I will respect the bond my husband had with them and be nice as a tribute to him. If they harm my children or me, I'll simply walk away from their life. Our absence will affect them more than anything else. After meeting with my lawyer and finding a solution, I went straight to my boss's office the next day. I fixed a meeting with her and explained the situation. She looked worried and told me a bit about her friendship with my mother-in-law. They were just normal friends whose sons grew up together. She also shared how my husband was like a son to her, and they were great friends. She lost her son in a school violence incident and always kept in contact with my husband to feel close to him. She also told me that I was offered the job because of my own capability, not because I was a family friend. She assured me that nothing other than unprofessional behavior during office hours could jeopardize my job. Feeling secure about my job, I thought things would settle down. However, a few days later, my mother-in-law came to my house demanding that I transfer the ownership of the house to her. I firmly told her no and asked her to contact me only through my lawyer. She reacted by calling me names and shouting outside, causing a scene. The neighbors noticed and came forward to help, but she had already left. She returned in the evening, threatening not to leave my property until I signed some papers she brought. It was a complete disaster. I called the cops and she was arrested for trespassing on my property. My father-in-law bailed her out of jail, but now she has signed an agreement never to contact me or my kids again. She is also prohibited from coming within 100 feet of us. If my father-in-law tries anything, He could be put in jail, too. He's heartbroken that he won't see his grandchildren for a while, but it's safer this way. It's better for me to stay away from their money-hungry behavior. All our family members who have good relationships with me have blacklisted them, and our friends have done the same. My boss found out about it when my mother-in-law contacted her to try to get me fired. She refused and has been avoiding her calls since. That's really all for now. The fact that you think you're the a-hole speaks volumes about your self-esteem. No, you are not the a-hole and never will be in the eyes of a sane, nice person. Get those toxic in-laws out of your and your kids' lives. They deserve nothing, and there's a reason they got nothing in the first place. I see that you respect your husband a lot, but their presence will only expose you to toxic environments and harm your and your kids' mental health. Your safety and sanity are the priority here, and your kids deserve much better. I don't care how nice your father-in-law is to them. Both of your in-laws are toxic and good for nothing. Cutting them off before they cause more trouble is the best decision. It's eye-opening to see this kind of stuff happens to people. Reddit really opens your eyes to the real world sometimes. I would have never imagined this kind of toxic behavior goes on in someone's life who has already seen enough. You are not the a-hole, but your mother-in-law and father-in-law certainly are. After everything, they haven't changed and probably never will. It's best to drop those toxic people from your life. They deserve their own special